Well, today's topic is dealing with communication or communicative competence. Communicative competence. Right? I send you. Oh, Sadaf. Okay, let me check Sadaf. Sadaf and Stella. Hello, Stella. 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 Oh, Stella is not coming. Oh. Okay, well, so there are 7 students attending this class. Well, we are discussing the topic of our meeting today, that is communicative competence. And I think I have give you, and maybe you have read also other sources dealing with communicative competence. But what you read or what I gave you is a theory that is, I think it is the first, the theory is proposed by Delheims in to challenge Chomsky, Noam Chomsky, dealing with language competence and performance. Okay, so but from the source or from the material, what did you understand from that material? So before moving to what we are trying to figure out for our learners, for our learning or teaching program, I think we are trying to understand first the theoretical background dealing with communicative competence. So we are trying to understand the content, and after that we are trying to elaborate, to break down and to make it real in our syllabus and also our materials. Because designing syllabus and developing materials are, I think, embedded. What we have decided in the syllabus will be applied to developing materials or to materials development. So that's why we have to understand first the target, the target competence. In this case, we are defining communicative competence. So what is communicative competence? Based on what you read last night. How Delheims construct communicative competence. Okay, do you have, okay, well, maybe if you feel free, I think please feel free to write, yeah, what you have got from the materials, the points that you get from the materials. You can write in the chat box. Please write in the chat box when you got them.
Karena melon yang warna hijau, aku melon kirani. Yang warna merah itu warna kuning itu. Kayak biasa dibeli di pasar. Melon yang kirani. Kirani ya.
Mainly, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Actually, we read the article very fast. It was kind of complicated a little bit. I didn't understand everything, to be honest. Um, but mainly,
Yeah.
I think the article focuses on the communicative competence. Is that every individual has a system, like integrated system inside himself, regardless of the language. That has to
Mm.
do. It's like the ability to be able to. It
Mm.
has nothing to do with the
Yeah.
abstract language system. But then
Okay. Yeah.
this yes,
Mm-hmm.
the communication,
Okay.
the communicative competence. It has to do with the skills of communications.
Gusto di
I
pa
mean
siya.
that
Gusto
should
mo.
be delivered. Ibu, can you hear me?
Mm.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So that's mainly because actually it's what I think it needs more than one time reading to be able to grasp the main ideas within this article.
Mm.
Yes.
Okay. So what can you catch from the materials?
Yes, actually, it's talking about the communicative like skills that should be on so to be able to
Mm-hmm.
deliver the language
Mm-hmm.
successfully. So it's
Yeah.
talking about the
Mm-hmm.
knowledge should be of a language that should be owned by the individuals to be able
Mm-hmm.
to have this communicative competence. And by communicative competence, that how to be able to communicate and to be competent in communicating the language skills. That's mainly what I got. But I think it needs reading more than once.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. In the chat box, Francisca wrote the points that she could understand from the
The article.
materials, from the reading. But Francisca, can you give me more practical to understand? More, yeah, easier to understand. What points have you got? Maybe you will help or you will be able to help others. Yeah, like what Hen requested. So what is communicative competence? Okay, Francisca, can you make it more simple? Can you make it simpler? And maybe the others can also
Yes, ma'am.
propose
I
here in the
already
chat.
wrote it.
Nurul, yeah? Oh, no, oh, Francisca, yes?
I already wrote it in the chat.
Yeah, I read it. I read what you wrote. But I
Maybe
mean,
you can
can you
scroll.
make it simpler to
Yeah, I
get to
think
jot down the point? Yeah.
Yeah, I think Himes concludes that linguistics theory must be able to deal with heterogeneous speech community, especially in sociocultural features.
Well, dealing with this subject, materials development, you have to place yourself or your position as a materials developer, materials developer or as a teacher. So it is your position. You are not linguistic or linguist, or you are not. You are linguistic practitioners. You are not linguistic expert, but you are practitioners. So you are trying to use linguistic theories to teach or in teaching, especially in preparing the materials, in developing the materials. To understand or to be able to propose or to present or to develop the materials, we have to see first the target or the goal of teaching. And I think in the first meeting or last week, we discussed that in language teaching, I mean, our teaching will be to enable, to enable the learners to reach their goals. That is communicative competence. So that's why we have to elaborate, we have to identify, we have to break down the communicative competence. We have to define what do we mean by communicative competence.
Maybe it has to do with the ability to communicate like socially, uh, and to be able to solve the issues that arise or
Mm-hmm.
emerge by communicating with people, to handle those issues, like
Mm-hmm.
the strategies that we used. I think it has many aspects,
Mm-hmm.
like to be able to produce
Yes.
utterances that correct
Mm-hmm.
and grammatically accurate. And this is already an integrated system that we have as a native speakers of any language, for example. And so, like, grammatically, this is the system of the language that we have inside ourselves. And then
Mm-hmm.
socially, that to be able to communicate, like to use the utterances that are
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be used in some context correctly, not in another context. And this is the
Yeah.
common sense that we have socially as a speaker of any native language. And
Mm-hmm.
then I think to have the ability to handle the communication issues that happen usually when we speak or communicate with others. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, mainly grammatically and socially or sociology, in sociolinguistically way, and the strategies. Yeah, that's mainly what I got. It's quite
Mm-hmm.
complicated, but we're trying our best to.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a very complex thing. Yeah.
Yes,
Even
yes,
only
yeah.
the term is very simple: communicative competence. Um, oh, I think I will invite the others to share their ideas first. Nurul, Semanian, do you have anything to say?
Maybe communicative competence is not just about knowledge of language forms, ma'am, but it's
Mhm,
about the language itself,
mhm,
but also
mhm.
how people can communicate the language and
Yeah.
understand information effectively, to use the language
Mhm,
to inform the others about
mhm,
the information itself successfully.
mhm. Yeah. It is. I think more. It is simpler than. Okay. Yeah. So now you are getting the idea what Delheims has proposed dealing regarding to communicative competence. Yeah, but I think I want to confirm. What about the others? So it has a communicative competence has a very broad sense, but we can break down. We can break down it, yeah, into smaller, yeah, into smaller areas or topics, and then until we can define the content of our teaching, what menu will you will give to the learners, yeah, by breaking it down into syllabus, and then from syllabus, and then uh, you are trying to break down according to the time or the period of learning and also the materials. So as I told you before, that communicative competence for Delheims is to challenge the idea of Noam Chomsky on language competence and performance. Language competence is a tacit knowledge, human knowledge about their language. When they can use, they have performance. They have language performance. But from Delheim's point of view, this idea is limited to linguistic competence, even though um, Chomsky has dealt with performance, but performance here is limited to uh, the grammatical, I mean, rules that the user or the speaker follows or obeys in constructing or in performing language. So, according to Delheims, what Chomsky's proposed is limited to linguistic competence. For Delheims, it is not enough for someone to communicate with others if they only have linguistic competence. They have or they must have sociolinguistic competence. So besides they can construct utterances in their language, in the language that they learn, they can use it appropriately. Because in communication, grammaticality is not the only standard of being communicative, for being communicative. So in order to communicate, we have so dealing with communicative competence, we are not only focusing on linguistic competence, but we can also deal with sociolinguistic competence. So in language teaching, you have to help learners in order to reach or to achieve or to get those two competencies at least, linguistic competence and sociolinguistic competence. So for Delheim's communicative competence here refers to both linguistic competence and sociolinguistic competence. As a result, the language they produce is not only those are correct grammatically, but they are also appropriate to the context, to the situation they are speaking, to whom they are speaking with, in what occasion they are speaking. Okay, so um, from that idea, yeah, from those ideas, and then you are trying to break them down into smaller unit or smaller topics to learn how to make it practice, how to make it applied. For example, what do we mean by linguistic competence? And what do we mean by sociolinguistic competence? Linguistic competence is a tacit knowledge about language. The learners learn how to construct sentences, how to construct words, how to construct good sentences or acceptable sentences. And then after having ability in constructing sentences or maybe utterances, they will be able to use it in the real situation for communication with others. This communicative competence is based on the idea that language as a social means of communication or as a means of communication. Because language as a means of communication. So if you are learning a language, you will use it for communication, for interacting with others. Can you understand me? Do you understand me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Well,
Yes,
now
ma'am.
we are trying to elaborate, yeah, to elaborate this. The, the idea of the idea okay, so now based on the current development, yeah, based on current developments, that communicative competence has a very broad sense. So it is not only referred to linguistic competence and socio-linguistic competence. And then there will an inquiry about pragmatic competence, discourse competence, strategic competence, and multimodal competence. So nowadays, when you are designing language teaching, when you are designing a language program, you have to consider these 6 competencies, these 6 types of competence. So you are not preparing them for getting linguistic competence or socio-linguistic competence, but also pragmatic competence, discourse competence, strategic competence, and multimodal competence. And these competencies are engaged by native speakers. In other words, that we are teaching in order to get the learners able to be native-like. To enable the learners to have linguistic competence, social-linguistic competence, pragmatic competence, discourse competence, strategic competence, and multimodal competence. To make it real, we have to define what level of competence or what level of performance do you think, do you define? So what you have defined in the need analysis, and syllabus design. So you still have the same group, the same group of learners. So in need analysis, you are conducting need analysis and then syllabus design, but in the materials development, you are developing the material suitable for the syllabus that you design. So these 2 subjects are related each other. So don't make something different. It will be hard for you. So to make it easier, what you have designed in the syllabus, and then you are developing also. Okay, so based on what you are preparing for the syllabus, you will make or you will develop the materials. So the materials here is based on what you have in syllabus design. Okay, so now we are trying to understand or to break down, each term here, each components here, in order that we can reach in our teaching program, or in order that we can develop the material suitable for what you have designed here, or what you are defined here. So now you have to define or to determine the level of the learners. The level of the learners. So, for example, in linguistic competence, what do you want to reach? What can you understand, or what do you mean by linguistic competence here? So you can break it down into smaller terms or smaller concepts.
Yes.
Yeah. Or maybe we can start from one by one, yeah, from linguistic competence. So everybody has to define what do we mean by linguistic competence here. Competence in what, or ability in blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. So try to make a list of competencies that the learners should have. And then when you have finished getting linguistic competence, and then social linguistic competence, and then pragmatic competence, discourse competence, strategic competence, and also multimodal competence. Okay, so try to break it down now. I give you 10 to 15 minutes.
Yes, thank
Maybe you
you.
can complete
Actually, now,
one, two, or three. Yes?
actually, it's now getting simpler. I mean, now we understood the main concept.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Okay.
alhamdulillah.
Okay, so can you elaborate, or maybe can you make it simple to follow when you are designing materials, when you are developing materials, or when you are proposing the language program? So what do you mean by linguistic competence here? Linguistic competence is the goal, yeah. So one of the
Yes,
competencies, one of the types of competence that the students, or that the learners should reach or should achieve. So now we are trying to break them down into smaller one. Okay.
yes,
Yeah, I give you 10 minutes.
yes, yes. Linguistic knowledge.
Ma'am, would you please show the slide again?
Stella, Sada, Ifonda. I haven't got your name. Stella, Sada, Ifonda. None in Yin Pew. Hello, Nan.
Yeah.
Stella. Okay, so now communicative competence is broken down into linguistic competence, socio-linguistic competence, pragmatic competence, discourse competence, strategic competence, and multimodal competence. So now what you have to do is to define each. And if possible, and then you can break them down into several competencies or sub-competencies. None. Yeah. Social methods would suggest for given audience and situation. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Linguistic competence. So linguistic competence. So everybody has got communicative competence, and then you are moving to linguistic competence and socio-linguistic competence. And what about pragmatic competence? Discourse competence. What do we mean by pragmatic competence? Yeah, I agree, Stella. Francisca, pragmatic competence is principal language usage. Language usage or language use? So what is pragmatic competence? Ability to communicate which includes and social linguistic competence. Sada Sarfaras or multimodal competence. Linguistic competence, social linguistic competence. Okay. Sarfaras, you have defined all the 6 types of competence.
Yeah, ma'am, I have defined all.
Yeah, I know. Socialistic, yeah, good. Mathematics can be described as one of the abilities to produce and comprehend utterances. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Strategic. Mm-hmm. Multimodal competence. So learners can both understand and also produce language in multimodal or using multimodal means. None. Fragmented competence knowledge. Knowledge of condition and manner of appropriate use of the language. Discourse competence. Okay, can we discuss one by one? Basically, you have got the idea. Yeah, the main idea. I mean, uh, the basic idea of each types of competence. So linguistic competence, socio-linguistic competence, and then pragmatic competence, discourse competence, strategic competence, and multimodal competence. Okay, what about I think the others haven't talked about uh, discourse competence, strategic competence, and then multimodal competence. Only a few have talked about it. So now we are trying to focus on linguistic competence. If you are teaching learners to learn another language, what linguistic competence do you think they have to achieve or they have to get? So in order to define it, I think in order to show the focus of the learning, yeah, we have to define first what is linguistic competence. So linguistic competence refers to the ability refers to the ability or to the knowledge to the tacit knowledge of constructing how to construct utterances or language, how to construct language using the acceptable rules of the language, rules of grammar, rules of pronunciation. So in this case, linguistic competence refers to the ability to construct utterances to construct utterances which are acceptable, which are meaningful. So it is there is a standard, there is a competence standard there. Thus, the utterance, I do not refer to sentence because sentence and utterance have different meaning, have different implication. But when we speak, we are dealing with utterances. What is the difference between utterance and sentence? In a sentence, you have a complete form. You have subject, predicate, and then it has a complete idea. It is sentence, and it is usually written in especially in academic writing. Writing good sentences is vital. It's very important. But in speaking, grammatical form, grammatical form like sentence can be considered as utterance. What I mean is like this. So an utterance is any string of words. Maybe it is a word, maybe it is a phrase, maybe it is a clause, or it is a sentence. And utterance here, if we refer to utterance, the most important thing is not the form, but the meaning, the context. So utterances can be any form, maybe words, maybe phrase, maybe clause, or maybe sentences. In conversation, I think what we produce is sometimes only chunk of words, maybe only words, but with certain intonation, or maybe certain contour, or certain stress, but it has meaning because of the context. So even though you are producing one word, but if it is suited with the context, and then it can be meaningful for the speaker and the listeners. Okay, so linguistic competence here is ability or refers to ability, yeah, language ability or knowledge about language, knowledge about how to construct language, I mean, knowledge about the vocabulary, about the grammar, the rules of constructing language. So it is a linguistic competence. It is the first at the basic level of communicative competence. In communication, it is not enough for someone to communicate using only linguistic competence. But they have to have another or supporting competence that is sociolinguistic. The form that they construct should be appropriate to the context, to the situation, to whom they are speaking with, in order that they can produce or they can, they can produce acceptable language, acceptable utterances, or acceptable expressions. As sorry. Sorry. Sorry for a bad cough. Dealing with linguistic competence, I also have to highlight that the ability of constructing language, yeah, or the ability of constructing utterances should be meaningful. I mean, the ability is not only on constructing the grammatical form, but also meaningful. So there are two criteria for being good utterances. So it should be uh, meaningful. The sentence or the utterance or the construction they construct should be meaningful. So grammaticality is not enough to construct language, to show linguistic competence. Because if they can construct well, but they are not meaningful, so it is not acceptable, or they are not acceptable construction. To clarify this, Chomsky has proposed um, an example, a sentence which is grammatical sentence, but it is not meaningful or meaningless. Maybe you think it is very popular. Maybe anyone can recall it. The sleep, the green, colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Colorless green ideas sleep furiously.
Yes, Ibu, yes.
If we look at the form, it has a complete component.
Grammatically, yes. It's not logical.
So, yeah, colorless green ideas sleep furiously. If we look at the form, the components, the sentence has an P plus VP. The sentence has a subject and then predicate. So it is correct, grammatically correct, but it is
Yes,
meaningless. It doesn't make sense
yes,
or no sense. The sentence has no sense. Why? Because semantically it is broken. You can see colorless green. Green is colorful, but it is combined with colorless. So it is contradictory. It doesn't make sense. Our logic, our mind cannot accept it unless this expression is metaphorical. But if it is non-metaphorical, it is not acceptable. It is not meaningful. Colorless green ideas sleep furiously. What creature can sleep, or what entity can sleep? I think the living creature or the living entity, maybe human or non-human, like animal can also sleep. But it is ideas. But if we talk about metaphor, and then there is another problem. It is another problem. But my point is that in dealing with linguistic competence, the ability or the competence of constructing language should be supported by the competence in making sentences meaningful or utterances meaningful. But since um, Chomsky is a linguist, So he did not consider the sociolinguistic aspect of language. While Delheims is an anthropologist, so he considers sociolinguistic aspect highly. So that's why he has an antithesis, or I mean, he challenged Chomsky to have communicative competence. For Delheims, competence proposed by, yeah, the term competence proposed by Chomsky is limited to linguistic competence. So it is nothing with the use, language use, but it refers to language usage, dealing with rules, yeah, how to construct words, how to construct a phrase, how to construct sentences or clauses, etc. Or bigger units. But again, um, linguistic competence must be supported by socio-linguistic competence. It is not enough, according to Delheims, it is not enough to have only linguistic competence, which makes learners able to produce, or to construct utterances correctly or acceptable, but they must be able to use them in the real situation, in the real context. How to use the language, how to use the utterances appropriately. And I think there are some standards, some criteria for being appropriate. Appropriateness in terms of to whom the language is spoken to, or with whom they are speaking with whom they are speaking, at in what situation they are speaking. Is it formal language? Is it formal or casual? And what is the relationship among the speakers? Are they boss and subordinate? Are they friends? Are they children and caretakers? Or are they father and sons? So those relationships and also those, factors, relationship, yeah, uh, will determine what kind of language appropriate. In Japanese, we have 3 levels of speech: ngoko, boso, and kromo. There are 3 levels. And each level implies different partners, yeah, different participants. Kromo, yeah, is usually used to speak with parents or older people or respected people. When you are speaking to teachers, for example, or your boss, yeah, using kromo. But now it is not actively used by Japanese people, because Japanese is now Japanese is not dominating language. So any situation, bahasa Indonesia is used, or bahasa Indonesia is used in any situation.
even now at home, and bahasa Indonesia has been acquired by children. So the appropriateness here implies social factors, social relationship among the speakers to whom you are speaking with. In what situation? If the situation is formal, and then the language you use must be formal. For example, in bahasa Indonesia, in academic setting, the language used will be academically sound. The vocabulary that you use must confirm or must be suitable for academic setting. And those ability refers to sociolinguistic competence. So sociolinguistic competence here refers to the ability to use language appropriately. To use language appropriately. What about discourse competence? Oh, sorry, pragmatic competence. What do we mean by pragmatic? What do we study in pragmatics? We, yeah.
Like how to use language in a specific situation or context effectively, and to stick to the maxims so our communication be relevant and be to the point.
Mm,
Mainly has to do with context, like
mm,
specific context. Yes.
okay. Yeah. So the learners should have such competence. They have to be able to communicate effectively. They can understand the intention of the speakers, and they can also produce utterances uh, effectively. They must produce utterances which are relevant, yeah, to the context. The communication will be effective. There are some rules, there are some principles in communication. We have communicative principles, cooperative principles, and politeness principles. In communication, what we respond should be relevant to what the speaker said. And we have to be able to understand the implied meaning of the speakers. So in other words, they can produce, they can understand and produce both explicit or explicator and implicator. Explicit meaning and implied meaning. Because in communication, people sometimes mean more than what they say. They do not always say as what it is, say as what they mean, but they sometimes say mean more than what they say. If they have pragmatic ability or competence, they will be able to comprehend, to understand, and also to produce such utterances, the relevant utterances. Besides, they follow or they obey politeness principles. And also understand, or I mean, they can use, yeah, politeness strategies in communication or in producing language. And then discourse competence. So the learners will have ability, or the learning process is to enable the learners not only to understand but also to produce the relevant discourse, the relevant language. There are many types of genre in human life. Language is used for any purposes, and this implies or for any purposes and for any situation. They have to be able to understand the text or the discourse, and also they have to be able to produce it. And then in strategy competence, due to their limitation in learning, they can use their strategy in coming across, in understanding the language they are communicating, they are using. So strategic competence here refers to the ability to use strategy in order to be understood or to understand others. Sometimes using language transfer, sometimes, yeah, there are many sub strategies. And then the last one will be multimodal. Nowadays, yeah, due to information technology, we use language in any media. So in this case, we have a competence in understanding a language use in, for example, social media. Yeah, social media, how to filter the information, how to get the information through. What about hoax? So the competence, the multimodal competence is needed nowadays in this information era. Otherwise, they will uh, be kicked out by the information or by the media. Yeah? How we can live together with the media, using internet, using Instagram, WhatsApp. Yeah. There are many choices. Okay, so I think I give you, yeah, some yeah brief understanding of what we have in communicative competence broken down into linguistic competence, and then socio-linguistic competence, and also pragmatic competence, discourse competence, strategic competence, and multimodal competence. I think time is over. Oh, yeah, it is over or it is enough. Okay, we should have ended this session at 4:30. Yeah, but now it's already 4:41. So it's over 10 minutes over. Yeah, but it's okay. We can complete our discussion today and then see you next week with a different topic. Thank you.
Sorry, mom.
Okay, do you have any?
I forgot to scan the
Oh,
code. I was a bit late. It's
oh,
Stella.
oh, oh,
I don't
oh,
think I
oh,
scanned
oh,
it.
oh. Are you sure? Oh, Stella, are
I
you?
did not.
Okay, so I will
Yes.
report it to the administrative staff because it's already expired. So I cannot.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Let me try. Okay. Oh, it is done.
Wow.
Okay,
Okay.
it is still accepted. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very
Thank you.
much, everybody.
Thank you
See
so
you.
much,
Thank
Ibu.
you so much, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you
See
so much,
you.
ma'am.
Thank you
Have a
and
great
Thank you
goodbye.
for
You're
explaining such a
Goodbye.
complicated topic. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Most
Thank
welcome.
you, ma'am.